The hungry ghost liberates itself, an embodied Chiron. There is a figure in Buddhist cosmology called the hungry ghost. It has a vast, distended stomach and a throat so narrow that nothing can pass through. It is always reaching, as it has never felt fed. I did not know for a long time that I had organized a significant portion of my relational life around that figure. This time, the story shows the same wound from a different angle. The degree itself rather than only the pattern, and the figures who have stood on that degree before. I'm very touched these days because there is something underlying in the rivers of humanity right now, and it is how we can all separately, individually reconnect to our sense of value. If you speak from the word axiom, axiom is a principle, but it is also meaning worth. How do you make yourself worthwhile? How do you make your life worthwhile? How do you make your voice worthwhile? And now Chiron, entering Taurus, shows us that there is a wound in humanity because we have not spoken our values, because we barely know what we need, because we have been following outside authorities for a long time to tell us this is right, this is wrong, this is the way. And there is no other thing more slippery than following the way of others. I'm speaking from a place where I am in my heart, and I'm also going in on the way. It has been a long road. I love the way that I chose this lifetime. So to explore what value is as something deep, profound, and it may take some time. Uranus in Taurus, 2018 until 2026, showed us that value can be erratic, that it can lead to different unexpected situations. Chiron is going to come back to the place where it was discovered and show us that it all reduces to what the essential needs are. Why now? I do not believe in coincidence. I just know about resonance. What Chiron has done for humanity since 2018 until now is give us the capacity to have the courage to take space for who we are as individuals. Even if we do not know yet what individuality looks like, at least it gives us the courage to take the space, to breathe it, and to expand. The way Chiron expanded to the sky and became a witness that the pain could be the healing instrument. Chiron is now entering Taurus. On the same year Uranus left, the cycle of liberation that began in 2018 is completing. The structure is going to support the healing of value, and that healing has to come from the liberation of the individual, creating the space that is needed. There is a gap right now, and it is beautiful because each one is playing a role. Taurus is ruled by Venus, the archetype of the second house, the sign of the body, the earth, the resources, the talent, the thing that you can hold in your hand. Chiron, moving through Taurus for the next 7 years, is asking us to go deeper than the abstract idea of self-worth and look honestly at how we have organized our material lives around the same wound. How have we undercharged, overgiven, worked for less than we are worth, allowed others to set the price of our time and presence? The hungry ghost pattern plays out in every transaction, in every negotiation, in every moment we say yes to a deal that the body is refusing. While transiting Chiron was in my second house after my return, I was totally driven to study what money really means. Not only did I get into Bitcoin, but I had dedicated the last half a decade to understanding Austrian economics, of what value really is. Little did I know that it will open a new perspective on what it means to become free and responsible. Ludwig von Mises called it subjective value theory. The worth of a thing is never set by the market, never set by another. It is set by the individual who chooses it, which means the hungry ghost, the one who lets others determine its worth, is not only psychological wound, it is an economic one. Quote, Prometheus is a kind of inspirational daemon. He is a force within the psyche that has access to knowledge of how the cosmic system works and how to apply it to the everyday affairs of human beings. Liz Green. The myth. Chiron is the son of Saturn, a centaur. He's half an animal and half divine. He is the greatest healer and the teacher of his age. He carries a double wound that will not close because he is immortal and cannot die from it, thus unable to heal himself. The wound stays open indefinitely. In the meantime, Prometheus is chained to a rock by Zeus, which is Jupiter, and an eagle eats his liver each morning, which heals overnight, so the process can repeat. His crime was stealing fire from the gods and giving it to humanity. Jupiter is the jailer, while the fire, the Promethean principle, is the liberation of the soul from the conditions of the known, the spark of individuation that burns through inherent structure. Richard Tarnas and Liz Green have both written about this relationship between Prometheus and Uranus. The resolution arrives through this single exchange. Chiron offers his immortality back to the gods, to Jupiter. Jupiter accepts, while Chiron descends into Hades in place of Prometheus, and Prometheus is freed. Chiron, now mortal, can finally die. He then ascends and becomes the constellation Centaurus. His wound transformed into permanent light in the sky. In principle, Saturn set the condition because he was Chiron's father, and the wound was part of that bond. Jupiter held the power to release it. Chiron does not heal himself through knowledge, though he possesses all of it. He heals through surrender and through the willingness to let what he has always carried become something larger than his own pain. In that path, Prometheus, Uranus, is free, individuated. Therefore, Chiron is the vulnerability that also becomes our biggest gift while living the experience. Quote, the creative spark, cultural and technological breakthrough, the enhancement of human autonomy, the liberating gift from the heavens, sudden enlightenment, intellectual and spiritual awakening. End of quote. The discovery and the degree. On November 1st, 1977, a body was discovered orbiting between Saturn and Uranus and named Chiron. The degree where it was found carries a Sabian symbol. Then Rudyard named it the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, riches that come from linking the celestial and the earthly nature. To trust the vulnerability of the pain, to surrender to it rather than reach past it. It is the bridge Chiron offers, and it is that surrender that supports the individuation path. It is the wealth that comes from integrating both spirit and matter. When you link this process, it brings to the individual consciousness something that has been elusive as the rainbow can be, because it never ends. It brings to the source of symbolic, universally valid wealth. The substance is found not by going directly toward it, by traversing the entire arc and arriving at the place where the light meets the ground. That is the degree where Chiron announced itself to the world, and this is where spirit and matter find a resonance so they can understand the meaning of value and the meaning of being, of worth. That is the axiom. That third degree carries a specific resonance in the charts of others who have traversed their own underworld. Dante brought the electrical Uranian spark of breakthrough to make the inferno a visible map one can walk through. Carl Jung held his natal Neptune on this exact point, dissolving the boundaries of the mind to map the vast ocean of the collective unconscious from the inside out, showing us that reclaiming our worth requires descending into the dark, heavy architecture of the body where the shadow is physically held. They anchor the sky and the psyche at this degree. While they receive the high frequencies of Uranus and Neptune, my Jupiter in Taurus is here to ground them, to turn the cosmic transmission into the physical, somatic reality that can be lived and valued on the earth plane. I align very much with this resonance. When I find that I share frequencies with situations, persons, or things, they become a way for me to go back to myself and recognize the deep meaning, not from my head, but from an inner frequency of knowing. Something is resonating at such an internal level that I just get it. I don't need to read about it. I don't need to analyze it. Sharing this degree with Dante or Jung isn't about looking outside myself for confirmation. It is the visceral internal recognition of the track. It means the map is already alive in my cells. The father. I was 8 years old. My father died. The gaze of his eyes had never fully landed on me in the way a child required thereafter. His vacuum was so big, I never understood I had been left without it. What I did not understand for decades was that his absence gave space to a structural principle of loss, a yielding of authority toward whoever will take this place, a constant seeking of the gaze that was filled with that profound emptiness. Every relational field I entered after that became a potential site for the gaze to finally arrive. To be honest, I was not choosing this consciously. The hungry ghost was filling the space automatically, reaching across every encounter towards the thing it had never received. I cared for others more than I cared for myself, because caring for the other was the form the reaching took. If I made myself indispensable to someone else's life, perhaps the gaze will turn and find me. The final sting. Something happened in a relational context that I will not describe in full here. What I will say is that I was self-devaluated in front of another person in a way that dropped me completely to the ground. There was nothing I could stand on and call meaningful. I felt a lot of shame, and I was disappearing inside of it. At the same time, there was anger, because that day I realized I was not caring for myself. I had been completely fascinated by the projections. What it revealed was not caused by the other person. The wound was already there. I had had my Saturn return at 29 years old and made appropriate changes. I moved to New York. During my Uranus opposition, there was also a big shift. I decided I wanted to explore a new way of living, changed my habits, started meditation, became more integrated. But there was something that was not really working, and it was that I had completely neglected caring for myself. I had merged with the other and felt I had no more agency, no more sense of worth. I was 50 years old, not just confused, but beaten up by life. When I fell on my feet that day, I said, I will never let this happen to me again, ever. The wound does not open to punish. It opens because the soul has arrived at the threshold where the old compensation pattern can finally be seen for what it is. It was perfectly timed. It was October 2015, the exact date of my third and final Chiron return. At 51 years old, the sky showed me how to stop theorizing my life and to actually embody the process. The old survival structures built to protect me from the absence of my father had finally become too rigid. It took a sudden, violent shattering of that architecture to break me open, ensuring that I wouldn't spend the rest of my life hidden, feeding a hungry ghost. The collapse was brutal, but it was the only way to initiate the liberation. The 12 years between. What has evolved within a full Jovian cycle is the substance of this piece. I have moved through the evolutionary astrology, human design, systemic constellation, somatic practice, German new medicine, and a long interior process of understanding what the wound actually is. Alongside all of that, the body is doing its own work. My body is carrying a long arc of unresolved separation. The father at 8 years old, and then, decades later, the loss of an entire collective, the community that dissolved when I moved and when I spoke up against programming. There are relationships that ended or shifted. Then there is my mom's passing, a profound somatic shattering of the structures of belonging that had defined me and then ceased to exist. The body holds in loyalty that which the psyche needs to release, to face and encounter, to receive as it is. And the holding is the organism that knows patiently for the conditions that make release safe. All the teachers and practitioners who held this arc carry the axis in their own chart in ways I did not see until I looked. far away from coincidences. They are vibrating at a frequency I needed to meet. The chart selects when it is ready to work. In the last year and a half, a number of close friends started creating gaps. Their presence, which had been constant, began to disappear. At the very beginning, that gave me the sense that something was missing, and then I understood that it was an opportunity for me to integrate the hungry ghost. The withdrawal had made me doubt myself, scanning back through everything I might have said or done to cause the distance. Was it my shit posting, my new love for Bitcoin, economics, or geopolitics? Or were they still upset at my fierce stand against this pandemic and the poison they labeled as a vaccine? The truth was that my friends left when I started standing on my own authority and speaking my mind. The actual topic, whether it was Bitcoin, vaccines, or whatever, matters less than the profound isolation of that experience. My dreams are a channel that shows me something different I need to see. The gap I was feeling, the loss, the pain that had always been there. The friend's absence was not created by the withdrawal. Their presence had been feeling it. I had been feeling it with my overcaring, and before them, in singular with others, and before them, with others still, caring for people as a form of reaching towards the gaze that had been absent since I was 8 years old. The open space is not the wound. The open space is what the wound had been preventing me from inhabiting. The first week of April 2026, a dream arrived. A kind of dream that is so vivid, I stay inside it for days. In it, I was standing between Roman gates and walls. The dream showed me a way in and out. The sensation of feeling in prison was real, and the open space was equally real, and I was shown both simultaneously. The hungry ghost was named that week as a mechanism to be recognized. It was organized around the child's completely reasonable response to an unbearable absence. The days that followed, I started to feel very uncomfortable. I noticed my body was showing me a way to move and to allow more space. Thereafter, I went to Vancouver for systemic constellations work. What opened there was the work on the wound itself. Neither from the place of hurt, not from a place of trying to understand or assign meaning, but from the place of feeling. I received my parents in a constellation. I wept. For the first time, I felt what it was to have grown up, to have taken what they were able to give and to have released them from the demand to give what they could not. The hungry ghost does not dissolve through understanding. It dissolves through the body having a different experience. Chiron can only be experienced. No book, no text, no podcast, not even this text can tell you how it is felt. Chiron is not a sacrifice, but a surrendering to what the maturity of Saturn meets the Promethean fire and knows that it owns the field, the journey, the story. My Jupiter is in Taurus. The healing was always going to arrive as a physical reality, as something that the cells hold differently, not as a conclusion the mind reaches. The fascia work, the qigong, the subtle embodiment movement practice I have been building during this period are the direct somatic address of what the body was carrying that the mind stopped naming. Quote, "There is a river flowing now very fast. It is so great and swift that there are those who will be afraid. They will try to hold on to the shore. They will feel that they're being torn apart, and they will suffer greatly. Know the river has its destination. The elders say we must let go of the shore, push off into the middle of the river, keep our eyes open and our heads above the water. See who is in there with you and celebrate." The Hopi Elders, Oraibi, Arizona, June 8, 2000. My Saturn is in Pisces in my first house. The elusive authority of my father has become my actual spiritual path, forcing me to become my own person. For a long time, my Uranus opposition in Virgo showed me that the relationships were the map to my inner fire, a fire I could only totally embrace once I integrated both spirit and structure. The architecture of my value is the way to express my reality in the most colorful of all ways. This somatic focus is the very essence of Chiron's loop through the body, and now that it has moved into Taurus, the vessel itself is the bridge to reach the heavens, transcending Saturn's edge. The routine is simple. Care for your beautiful vessel. That is an essential need. Now, I'm relaunching my work. I have a brand new website. Click here in this link. I'm building new ways of connecting through my voice, coming from a place I will describe as radiant. I use that word carefully because radiance is the interior warmth that does not require a surface to land on. It generates from within and moves outward freely. The hungry ghost is organized around the surface it needs. Radiance does not need the surface. What is coming? In October 2027, these points converge in the sky simultaneously. The Chironic principle arrives at the exact degree of my natal Jupiter while transiting Pluto lands precisely on my ascendant, burning away the last remnants of my old survival identity to reveal my raw personal power. This is the soul's evolutionary direction striking the threshold of identity itself. Voice and value meet the liberation principle in the house of relationship. The full cycle completes. In the myth, when Chiron ascends after his death, he becomes Centaurus, a constellation. The wound that remains open in a mortal body becomes permanent light in the sky. He embodies the wound at a frequency that moves completely beyond suffering. When Prometheus is freed from the rock, he stands fully as the one who has always known what humanity needs. The changes are a temporary interruption. Liberation is the absolute return to his function. I carry fire. The fire is full of rage at times. The raw fury of having to carry the burden of an absence. It is also the memory of trying my absolute best to perfect every moment, back when my mother's gaze still supported my creative life. For a long time, I think I'm carrying the absence, the gap, the hunger. The fire and the hunger occupy the same interior space for most of my life, and I cannot tell them apart because I'm still building the interior structure large enough to hold them separately. October 27 is a confirmation. The chart shows me then what is already becoming true now. The hungry ghost liberates itself not by being filled, but by discovering that what it carries all along is never an absence. It is a frequency, and as a frequency, once it knows what it is, it does not reach, it only transmits. Happy solstice. There's some footnotes that I'm going to leave you to read. Have a great week.